I can tell you, black men aren't getting away with that. Maybe back in the day that happened, like with Bill Cosby, and that's why they caught up to him now. But like since 2000, we're not getting away with that. But yeah, there'll be certain situations where white dudes get away. But once the woman says something, see the way they used to do in the United States, just to close this out, is they would buy the women off. So you said did the soccer player pay the fine to the state, the courts, or did he pay the woman? I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm just asking.
What's the question?
Did he pay the woman or did he pay the court like a fine for him doing a crime?
Oh, the court.
Oh yeah. So in the United States, the game that they play is if it's something that's considered assault, because there's degrees to it, because there's degrees to that, right? And it's all bad. I'm not here to say it's all bad, but there are degrees to severity. Just like shooting somebody and he lives is not the same thing as shooting somebody in the head. But it's all bad. Nobody wants to be shot, obviously. What happens is they will give the women what's called an NDA, and they say they want you to sign this so you can't speak about it, and they give them like money. Because once it goes to the courts, that's it. The court can't let you, they're not going to let dudes off the hook with that because the society doesn't validate that. But see, now, post Me Too, the courts allow those women, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what happened. It allowed those women to break those NDAs, so they got the money, and then they were able to then pursue criminal charges, even though they agreed they wouldn't speak on it. Not saying those women are bad for doing that at all. Just saying this is what our courts did, and they were able to tap into stuff that happened 30, 40 years ago. So you got women coming up with stuff. So if you had dudes that were in higher classes, that they had a history of doing stupid stuff, and what would happen was they would pay the women off. I mean, Diddy is going through that right now. And ironically, Diddy is going through that with a man. I mean, a man saying that, he was assaulted by Diddy.
Water. Just a second.
So, yeah. So that's not really a difference. That's just to, illustrate that, this stuff is always litigated, So yeah.
Yeah.
But that's actually, yeah, that's crazy. Cause that's crazy. Cause that means the state low key, oh yeah, you assaulted her, but you're going to have to pay us a fine. That's crazy. Like that wouldn't even happen. What it would is they would never let it get out. They would just pay the chick.
Yeah.
And the chick would take.
I would even wonder what would that fine even look like?
It has to be official.
Yeah, did they put like an official number on how much he paid?
See,
in this case was 1 million reals, I think.
So 1 million reals is, if you break that down to 5, that's like 200,000.
50K?
200,000, right? Because it's 5 times.
That's about.
Yeah,
that's true. That's correct. I forget the exchange. That's about. That could be kind of what you could see. The difference is the woman would get that money direct. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And so, because once it goes to the courts, that's not happening. Like that's not happening. Like she's and usually another thing that they do in the United States is that if a woman does bring criminal charges and they win in criminal, that usually makes it so it's pretty much all but guaranteed that they're going to win in civil. And if they lose in criminal charges, then they could go and still pursue a civil case where it's going to be easier for them to win. So the dude may not win and get the money directly to them. That's what happened with O.J. Simpson, where O.J. Simpson got off because, I don't know, I forget, he was not guilty. He was not guilty. And people joke around that doesn't mean he didn't do it, but he was not guilty. And the family of Nicole, now this is a black man to a white woman, right? And this is gotten O.J. Simpson was a famous football player. White people loved O.J. Simpson. That's what made it such a big thing when that did happen. That family ended up winning in court, and then OJ stole his paintings back, and they ended up giving him like a crazy charge because they wanted him to get back. That was a special case, though. That was a special case. Because Usually black men don't get away. When stuff gets that public, it just never happens. OJ is like one of the few who's ever been able to dodge that bullet. He's out of jail now, but he's like in the 70s. So, um, yeah. So I mean, it's the thing is, the United States, women are going to be able to pursue stuff, and even and especially now, post Me Too, pretty much the accusation and what you're dealing with right now is you have a lot of women that are false flagging stuff. They're saying something happened, and then dudes are able to prove it didn't. Now, this is a minority of obviously what goes down, but one of the things that people are saying is that makes it harder for women that when something does happen to be believed because you have women that they're saying stuff and they're trying to get a bag off of something, and these dudes are getting smarter. So if they didn't do anything, they're getting text messages, they're able to prove their case, but a lot of dudes suffer over that. So yeah, men have a low tolerance. Men are not out here saying that women should just be able to be hit in the United States. We just don't have that culture here. And like I said, you got dudes that they will throw their life away to kill another dude that did that out of nowhere. They really will. So yeah, like I said, hitting women is pretty much up there with sexual assault. And the reason why I say it like that is because if you get convicted of sexual assault, you get put on a list. So it's not a matter of you do a crime, you did the time, or you did whatever, and then you're done. Like if you steal something, you get put on a registry and you're marked for the rest of your life. And that's something that follows you. And I'm not saying it should be that way. It should be that. I agree with that. But hitting a woman doesn't put you on that list legally like that. But it does that in all but name. Because if you get caught for like domestic violence or something like that, you lose. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that way. I'm just saying that severity matches what actually happens. So, yeah.
So
Now, if a woman goes back to a man after they've been hit, okay, I don't got nothing to say at that point. Because I've had that situation too, where women will go back to men after they hit them when people tell them not to, and then they get a hit again. Obviously, the dude needs to be in trouble again. But then it becomes, come on now, don't sit here and drop charges, when your family got involved. So it's like it gets complicated sometimes because it's like whatever. But yeah. Anyway, appreciate y'all coming to the stream. It's like what, 25? How long have we been live?
we've been 1 hour 41 minutes to exactly.
Okay, so we can.
And I definitely appreciate the guys coming through because the viewership is amazing. Like
so what I'm curious.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is I'm not saying I don't believe this stuff goes down in Brazil. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I want to see is what was something like, let's say 10 years ago, because I know you're not like, obviously you're not old, so I can't say 30, 40 years ago. What was something like 10 years ago versus today that's better or that's worse in Brazil when it comes to feminism?
I like to think that it's not very different, but I like to think that it's better in the ways that we can talk more about what we want. And that is the thing about all the topics in Brazil. Like I feel that we can fight for stuff and try to be listened. So yeah.
Okay. Because the reason I asked that question is because, when oil prices were were higher, like in the 2000s, Brazil definitely as a nation state benefited from that because the oil, because Brazil has a lot of oil. So I didn't know if that kind of fed into some of the political. I don't know nothing about political. I don't pretend to know anything about Brazil. That's why you notice that I'm not saying nothing about what goes on there, because I don't know. I'm going to speak on what I don't know. So I'm just interested in that, because when you look at feminism, you look at, okay, you want to have a progression. So in the United States, like I said, Me Too was a progression. That was what women said was going down in the workplace. That happened in like 2017. So I guess what I'm asking is there like a definitive change, like as far as how men treat the women, like something like, that, and I'm not saying it has to be good. I'm just saying that they're bad. Because the thing about the violence thing, that's to me always going to be a thing. It's like one of those things that you try to improve it. Should you always try to improve it? Absolutely. But is it ever going to be zero? Probably not. And so I was looking for something more definitive, like are women allowed to work more than they used to be? Are women allowed to is I guess gay rights more available than it was 10 years ago, or 15 or 20 years ago? It doesn't have to be 10 years. Like where is the progression that you've seen in Brazil, or where things have receded and gotten worse in that way, on that aspect?
Yeah, I think we have more laws, maybe, that can guarantee us about some stuff, like about work or whatever. What else?
Are they
Yeah, but
enforced?
what?
Are they enforced? Because people can pass laws and then they act like those laws don't exist when convenient.
No, I didn't understand.
Like he means like
Sorry,
they,
so
yeah, go ahead.
so they pass the laws, but they don't necessarily like enforce the laws. Like, so if a woman says, they pass a law saying that women should do, let's say they get paid. I know they don't get paid equal, but they get paid equal. And then a woman can prove definitively that they don't get paid the same as a man in this position. Do they actually deal with it, or do they just act like they didn't pass a law? Do they do that in our country sometimes?
Um, I'm not sure if I
Do
understand.
you feel like did they actually uphold the laws that they passed?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Let me see. Wait, I'm trying to say the last ones.
Got your little list over there.
No, I'm searching.
Oh, okay. Oh man, yeah, good. And while she's doing that, definitely like and subscribe. I see we have a new commenter. This is Messiah of the Dune. Let us know. Everybody should let us know what country or state they're in, because we're streaming from Brazil. I'm from New York, but obviously I live out here in Brazil now.
Yeah, like the last ones for the last 10 years that was approved was allow for the woman, like for murder. I don't know how to say that. Feminicide. Wait. Let me translate this
You call
word.
it femicide. Femicide.
Yes, feminicide. Yeah, feminicide. Yeah, so this law was recognized in 2015. In 2018, we had a law for sexual importunation that now is crime. In 2021 was a law to prevent hate crime and combat politic violation. No, politic violence against women. And yeah.
Hold on. You know what? I wasn't gonna pull this up, but since we talk about we brought up hitting women. Because people be thinking I just be saying stuff. Well, let me see if I can pull this up. I want to pull up that video. Remember when Mira asked me, "Do I believe that men should be able to discipline their wives?"
Mm-hmm.
Like she just straight up asked me that out of nowhere. This was like a year ago. This is when we were both. Let me see if I can find it. That was a crazy. That was a crazy. But and obviously this is one thing, but it kind of puts my point. I might have deleted that. God, I can't believe I deleted that video. Come on, man. Let me see. I don't think I did. Give me a second.
I'm telling you, deleted it.
I mean, I still have it. I just don't have it in. I just didn't upload it. That was the problem. And so if I try to pull it up as a window, it comes up weird. Let me see.
And Sarah Pensive says most violence in relationships
I'll
is
just get the clip
initiated by
and then
women
send
when it comes
later.
to black folks in the U.S. Sarah Pensive.
Well, the thing is, the mentality, and this is true with black men, and I always tell, this is my philosophy on violence, is I tell men, if a woman hits you, and when I say hits you, even like, obviously, if she hits you with the intent of hurting you, you need to end that relationship immediately. Because if you hit her, it's always going to be your fault. And there's nothing arguing about it. It doesn't matter the situation. It's always going to be your fault. You're always going to be the monster, going to be the villain, right or wrong. Doesn't matter what she did. That's how you're going to be dealt with in the courts. And if you stay in a relationship, with a woman that hits you, that's kind of on you. Another thing I tell dudes too, because understand, I don't just tell, I don't say, women should have reasonably knew a man was this. There's signs. Like, if a man usually doesn't haul off and hit you, like, he usually does little things to kind of assault your person in little ways to test you. And when he does that, you need to deal with it. You need to, like, leave. But I say the same thing to dudes. If a woman is crazy and you choose to be in that relationship with that woman, anything she does to you is on you, because that's how the law is going to see it. And quite frankly, you knew what you were dealing with. So what happens is, a lot of people will deal with certain toxic people, whether it's a man or a woman, because they're sexually attracted. Because dudes will readily admit that they like dealing with crazy women. And I say, once you say that, everything she does is your fault, because you reasonably knew what you were dealing with. Like, I don't fault a crazy female for being crazy. I'm just not going to deal with you. And I'm going to let you be that somewhere else. If you choose to be in a relationship with that, that's on you. And men understand that. Men know what they're playing with when they do that. What happens with women a lot of times is women like men to be violent. They just like men to be violent with other men. Meaning they like to be able to point a man somewhere and then, under the guise of protection, him deal with another man, a man that made her upset. And what happens is, when that same wolf bites them, now it's all is, I don't know, I can't believe it happened. Now I'm not saying that man shouldn't be dealt with at the fullest extent of the law for hitting a woman. But what happens is, then it becomes this greater conversation about, are most men violent? The vast majority of men are not violent. It's a small percentage of men that are violent. And so then it becomes, is it the burden of all men to have to suffer under laws because of the potential threat of violence? That's what I was saying earlier on. And that's the conversation that nobody never wants to have. Because usually with these women that are constantly getting popped, usually they go back to these guys. And a lot go back to these guys. It's not something where it's just these random women dealing with random men, and then it's just, they don't know nothing about nothing, and it's the first time. And like, I'll give you a perfect example. We got this isn't violence, but we have a famous rapper. Her name is Nicki Minaj. She's like the #1 rapper pretty much, and she's been for the last decade. She married a guy that literally has been convicted of assaulting a female, literally on the list. She married him. Now to be fair, her fans did not like that. Her fans that are women did not like that, were not cool with that. That's what she did. Great role model. Now, I'm not saying that if something happens to her, that's what she deserves. No. But what I am saying is, she knew who she was dealing with. And so this idea, I just didn't know and I didn't understand. I'm like, look, he'll be dealt with, but I don't believe you just didn't know, didn't understand. And here's another thing. She didn't really care about what he did, because even that woman was saying that they were intimidating her. Now, is that indicative of every single situation? No. But what I'm saying is, there's a certain mentality a lot of women have, and women are not the sisterhood that feminism tries to present it to be. They're not. And they have their own agendas. And if that coincides with what they want, they have no problem throwing other women under the bus. They don't. Home wrecking is another thing. Women have no problem sleeping with a married man, and they know they're married most of the time. Today, especially today. They don't care. And so, It's not necessarily this all women versus all men thing. It's not. But anyway, wait, what happened to the chat?
Yeah, the chat's going crazy. I'm trying to keep you got. Man in the back with the X-ray glasses says, "Would Brazil be considered a westernized country?"
That's a good question.
I mean, I'd rather the woman who's been living here answer that one.
Yeah, answering that, I don't know.
What do you think?
I don't know what is this word.
Westernized?
Yeah.
Like similar to the U.S. and how they
To the
deal with-
U.S. and Europe. To the
Yeah.
U.S. and Europe.
Less like India, more like the United States.
More like US, of course.
There's your answer. You know. Okay, let me see what else is going on. Man in Black also says, because this discussion is a bit too nuanced to have with somebody that isn't actually from a westernized country. It's different. Oh, I don't know if Man in Black knows, but we're in Brazil. And she's Brazilian. So, I mean, she's, she'd be like the perfect person to ask about questions about Brazil. Yeah, I would think so. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Latin America, there's certain stuff that men can get away with in Latin America that men here, even white men, can't get away with in the United States. So I definitely, like I said, I understand complaints that women, there's certain things that even other women enforce that women don't like in Latin America, and that varies because obviously all Latin American countries are not the same. Obviously, they're not. Even Brazil, I mean, 200, you get what I'm saying. But there's certain things within Latin culture, I've heard, Latin women speak on that. So when I hear Latin women speaking on feminism, that's going to be slightly different than if I hear like a woman from America. And that's not to say there's no complaint, but you always have to filter that from the country or the region that they're from. Like when you hear somebody from the Middle East, you got women talking about in the Middle East, I want their feminism is I want the right to drive a car without a man in it. Well, nobody's debating that. I want the right to divorce. If I cheat on my husband, yeah, I may get shamed, but I'm not gonna have rocks thrown at me until I die. Nobody's questioning that. Nobody with hijab, that's up to, women should have a right to do what they want to do according to their religion and stuff. No, there's certain basic things that nobody really questions. Nobody's questioning a woman's right to vote. Nobody's questioning a woman's right to employment. Usually the biggest complaints you hear women have in the United States now is money. It's really a man should do X, Y, and Z. The violence thing actually becomes secondhand. It's really the money that they really want to complain about. And I'm like, well, you can make your own money. What are we talking about? So it's, it's a conversation. It's very deep. Ultimately, like I said, So,
now, I guess I could ask Erica, as a question to throw in there, what would be the solution to improve various things? Like you could, I guess, the three biggest things in Brazil would be A, B, C, and this is how I feel we should go about improving those three different things. What would those three be, and what would be the method of improvement?
I don't know, like, for example, do you have a solution for racism?
In Brazil?
No, in general, for racism, do you have a solution for that?
Stop talking about it. Stop talking about it.
Stop talking about it?
Yeah.
And then you think that's will solution all the racism?
Well, it'd be my solution, but the thing is, I have a solution. So I just asked you, what would be your solution to?
No, I'm trying to understand. Like, just.
It's like you're trying to answer a question with a question. So let me go back to what I said before.
That's not my answer.
It's not my real answer, but I'm just saying, just to restate the question.
No, I'm not trying to answer with another question. I'm just trying to make a context of this stuff. Because, like, have some stuff that don't have like a specific solution. But yeah, we can make better laws. We can have more severe severe punishments
for racism.
I'm answering your question.
No, I'm saying that what are the top 3 biggest problems in Brazil, and how would you go about fixing those top 3 problems? So it'd be 1 would be sexism, 2 would be racism, 3 would be classism, and how would you fix each one, in your opinion? That's the question.
Yeah, for all of them, better laws, most expensive punishments. Talk about that more in the schools.
But what are the top 3? I'm just trying to focus.
You just say.
So the top 3 is racism?
Yeah, very good ones.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying in Brazil, because I know for America it's different. That's why I'm asking you, what's the top 3 problems?
Just answer it.
Okay, so all right, so the top 3, just to let you guys know, racism being number 1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what would be number 2? Sexism?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 would be classism?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for racism, as it's defined in Brazil, because I know racism could be defined differently in America at this point. In 2024, would you consider racism to be something like a black woman wants to get hired at a specific job, because she's black, they don't even entertain it, and they hire a white person even though they're not qualified? Would that be considered like something that usually happens?
Yeah, more representation, I think. Like you don't, like I said before, like if you look for big companies, for big stuff, you don't see a good representation. Like how you can have like a huge country with so many black people and they are not in the places that everyone are.
Yeah, I do notice that. You have, how many, you would say is like maybe what, 20 million white people to 80 million black people? Is it more?
No, I don't know the numbers, but like everyone knows, we are the biggest country with more black population outside Africa. So it's just a point of view.
Now, is there anything, aside from making new laws, is there anything the black people can do amongst themselves that could change that dynamic in terms of racism? Because if it's about getting hired at the jobs, right? Would it be possible for those black people, since there's more of them, to pool together to create their own jobs? Is that possible?
Like what? No, sorry.
Like Ed, you can explain that in a different way in case I didn't explain it right. Like if it's more black people in Brazil, and one of the key things in racism, take for instance, they go for a job at a white company, obviously, and they don't get hired because they're black, being as though there's more volume of black people, aside from making laws, is there anything that black people do amongst themselves to change that dynamic of racism? In other words, not just rely on the white people to fix it. Is there anything the black people here, because there's more of us, is there anything they could do, in your opinion?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a direct answer. There's a lot of different stuff, man. I mean, so it's weird because when you look at Brazil or South Africa, that was kind of a similar situation where the black people are more a population. This is where that divide and conquer thing kind of happens. You got to realize certain countries are not made for certain people to win. It's just not. You look at the establishment of Brazil, with the Portuguese, you look at establishment of America in the United States, you look at when the British folks colonized South Africa, people are going to conserve resources. So it's really, the question is, what are they willing to do ultimately? Now they've made a decision to, revolutions have happened. We've had slave revolts in the United States, a lot more than what people like to talk about. But at the same time, the history, I don't know the exact history of Brazil, so I'm not gonna pretend I do. Versus the United States is different stuff. Like, we had our own stuff, they blew it up. Then we got civil rights when we went to these wars. I will say this, if I were going to make the case that white people need to do something, this is the case that I would make. America is one of the strongest economies in the world because we have a consumer economy that requires even the poor people to have money to spend. Now we have social programs, obviously, but we're not like Europe when it comes to social programs. We are a very work first country compared to the other, first world Western countries. Because the Europeans be having mad like benefits and stuff that we don't really get in the United States at the regular worker level. So my point is, people are able to spend money even at the lower levels, and because they're able to, like for example, when people are not taxed at the lower levels as much as they are at the higher ones. So as a result, people get a tax check in the beginning of a year. They usually get a refund check, and so people can spend money in the end of the year for Christmas and stuff because they know that's coming, or spend at the beginning of the year. That's money that's constantly cycling into the economy. That's the engine. The thing about Brazil is Brazil has a lot of natural resources and not a population that's so big that it consumes all of the natural resources. But what Brazil is missing is that kind of dynamic spending power. And it's because they have this culture of this kind of colonial era culture thing, feudalistic thing, where they want to hoard all the resources for the top folks. Usually they do it by way of color, but it's not just that, you know. And as a result, that keeps that engine from spinning as much as it otherwise could. That's really the main thing keeping Brazil from being like one of the dominant countries in the world. It's definitely a player because it's in BRICS and stuff like that, and its position is the strongest country in Latin America. But that's what keeps it from being like a global dominant country. So what I would say is that's an incentive for AKA the white people to be able to compete more on a global stage from a Brazilian standpoint, and then that obviously helps the other groups. This is the thing that they understood in the United States. So even when you have white people still wanting to have a lot of the money, they understood that, like for instance, and I hate to be cynical this way, but this is just the truth. If you have a slave is expensive. You have to take care of them. You have for them to still work. They're expensive to house. Versus if you pay somebody a wage, you're giving them a wage, but they still got to pay for themselves to live. This is why people are still doing indentured servitude even after slavery. So it's actually a less costly thing. And this is how these people think, by the way. This sounds like real cynical, but this is how they think. This is how the banks think. This is how they think. And so my argument in the United States is, for example, with African Americans, is we have to compete with China for Africa, for resources, right? Them messing us up has made it harder where we would be the best representatives for the United States in Africa for the next 100 years, because we spent all these times in Afghanistan and Iraq doing this BS that we did. We lost that time, and China was able to make headway in Eastern Africa. So now America has to play catch up, and I don't know if they can, because at the end of the day, they wanted to hoard the resources. Another example, they marginalized black men. What they never anticipated is that white women would be interested in dealing with black men at any kind of level, even marginalized. So now the negative culture they instilled in the black men is polluting white culture because they didn't anticipate that. So stuff comes back to bite you in the long run. So if you say, okay, what is the case for enriching? I'm not saying all, because you can't. Everybody can't win in a country. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Especially when you have a country of 200 million people, like Brazil does, America does. This is not like Finland or these countries with 20 million people. It just doesn't work that way. But you do want to elevate at least 50% of your population. And so there's ways to solve these problems. But what happens is, as individuals, we can't think past that, because it's all about get me and get mine. That requires a nation state lives longer than individuals' lifetime. So you have to have the vision to do that, which is why we have great leaders, in all over the world that are, famously known, whether it be Gandhi, whether it be, whoever, because they can have that vision. So classism isn't going to be solved. Classism is I would argue classism is the hardest one to actually fix. Sexism is a matter of socialization. Sexism is a matter of socialization. You got to socialize people in certain generations, And yeah, you can do that with laws and changing culture dynamics, media, and entertainment. Um, the what was it? Sexism, classism. What was it? What was the other
It
one?
was racism,
Oh yeah,
classism, sexism.
I spoke on race. Yeah, I spoke on racism. Yeah. So it just depends. Brazil is a very hard country on the racism front because in America things are clearly defined. You know, we have a one drop rule. Then white people said, I don't care how light you are. If you got a black grandparent, great grandparent, you black. Period. And
Right.
they enforce that. They enforce that sh to the point where even other quote unquote mulattoes didn't like that. You know, I know people have this thing about the term mulatto because I know I've been told it means a horse and stuff. That's what they use in the United States, just like how we don't like the South Africa uses colored because when we were called colored, that means you can't go into the white sink. So I know some people feel some type of way about mulatto,
And
but
that and that leads into the pinned comment I got. Who said this? I think it was Sir Pensive said, "What race / ethnicity does she consider herself?" She being Erica. I don't want to speak for Erica, so I'll let Erica.
Yeah, here I'm white.
Yes. And see, what people don't realize, like you said, Ed, in America,